recording here. I didn't want to record when everybody was introducing. Okay, just to go over a few of the supplies that are needed for the class. One thing that you will be needing, and probably in all of your classes you will use this, is your architectural scale. Okay, it's a sort of a triangular ended piece of equipment, and you'll see on each side different fractions and numbers that indicate what the scale are, and we'll be talking about how to read that today. If you're in garden design, you will also want an engineer's scale, and this looks very similar to the architectural scale, but instead of fractions at the end, you will see different numbers, so 30, 60, 10, 50. So you will need one of those, not necessarily for this class, but when you get into your more landscape and garden design classes, this is a way that you can draw very large things at a smaller scale. So that is the scale. You will also need a drafting surface. It could be a portable table like I have, or it could be a table with a square edge on it. My drafting table has a sliding bar on it, but a lot of tables you would just use a T-square, and this is an example of a T-square. One that is recommended for the class, and I believe this one is a 36-inch. Some of them are metal and have more on the edge. They have even like sort of a yardstick measurement on the edge, and what will happen is this edge right here will stick up against the side of your drafting table and then slide up and down for you to be able to draw perfectly horizontal lines with your paper. And then for the class you will need tracing paper. You can get a roll of it. These are actually sheets that I have here that are 24 by 36. The tracing paper is a little less expensive than going with a vellum or a parchment paper of some kind, and you can get this in a roll. I would say you would want an 18 or a 24-inch wide roll. It's rather inexpensive, and so if you make a mistake you can wad it up and throw it away and not worry that you've wasted a lot of money on paper. And it's translucent, so when you're doing like thumbnails and things, you can see underneath it to kind of trace things if you would like. So that's tracing paper, sheets or a roll, either one. It's a little cheaper in the roll than in the sheets. And then you will need triangles. Here is the 30, 60, 90 triangle, so 90 degrees here, 60 degrees here, 30 degrees here. This particular one has a sort of a beveled edge on it, which it's probably not real easy to see on the camera, but you can see there's like an extra lip there. And this is nice if you ever want to ink. We won't be doing a lot of inking in this class, but maybe in the intro you might. If you've already gotten your triangles and it just has a flat edge instead of a bevel, don't worry about that. You could always tape dimes underneath your triangle, and that raises it up so the ink won't feather. And then this is a 45-degree triangle, so it's 90 here, 45, 45, and this one actually has the flat edge on it. So you will need both for this particular class, and if you're in intro you would use these as well, and I'll be showing you how to use these in the class. Drafting tape or drafting dots. So here is a drafting tape. It's not as tacky. It looks like masking tape, but it's not as tacky, so it won't rip your paper when you're pulling it up. So some people prefer to use painter's tape which works as well, or drafting dots. Like if you get a drafting kit, a lot of times it'll have dots in it, and that's fine too. Same stuff. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this is an optional. This is not something you need for the class, but if you have a little extra money and you find a good deal, this is an adjustable triangle. It's like a cross between a protractor and a triangle, where you can adjust the angle that you want to draw at and tighten it down. It's a handy-dandy little tool. My dad was an engineer, and when I started drafting, he bought me an adjustable triangle, and he said, this will be your favorite tool. I'm like, yeah, and it has been. It's been one of my favorites, but it's not required for the class. You can do everything with the other triangles, so don't fear if you haven't got one, because they can be kind of costly to purchase. And then we have different drawing utensils that we can use. This is the one that I recommend the most. This is a mechanical pencil. This particular one is a 0.5, and you can put lead in it at different softnesses. The leads come usually in a little container like this, and so if you see here, there's quite a few in a container, and so you could experiment with the softness that you need to, that gives you a nice dark line, but isn't so soft that it's messy and smudgy. So a mechanical pencil like this, if you usually take off the top, there will be an eraser here that you can see that sticks in the top. And then some of them in the end of the eraser will actually have a little wire. And this particular one doesn't. Let me see if my other one does. Come out. Yes, this one has a wire, so it's kind of hard to see, but there's a wire in there. And that's used if you were to get a lead caught in the end of your pencil. You can unscrew the end and stick the wire in there to clear out that lead. Some people prefer a lead holder, specifically if they're working with a really hard lead for layouts. So this is a lead holder. It has a button at the end that you press to load the lead in. So you see that, and it comes with a sharpener usually. And so what you do when you're using a sharpener is there's these little holes, and you drop the lead into the hole, and then tighten it up, and then you stick it in to the sharpener and twirl it around until you have a nice sharp point, and then there's a little white soft part. You stick it in there to clean it off. Oops, it came right out. If you have a lead sharpener, make sure that you keep it in a Ziploc bag. If the lid were to come out, the graphite shavings wouldn't get all over your equipment. You want to keep your equipment nice and clean. I like to use a lead sharpener, or sorry, a lead holder for a really hard lead for laying things out, because it will go on really lightly, and then you don't have to erase that later on. And those refills come like this in a container. And then erasers are important in this class as well. You want to go with a really good drafting quality white vinyl eraser for our class. I prefer actually to use the retractable kind, and you can get this type even at like Walmart or Staples or any of those places as well. And we use these erasers in conjunction with an erasing shield. And so this erasing shield allows you to erase part of what you've drawn without erasing everything that's around it. And so if I were drawing something like this and I wanted to get rid of this part right here, then I could mask just the part I wanted to get rid of and erase it. Okay, and so it's nice and clean. And then when you're done erasing, you just brush it off. You don't blow on it because you might spit on your paper, and you don't wipe your hand across your drawings, because if you wipe your hand on your drawings, you're depositing oil on your paper, and that oil will collect the graphite, and it'll eventually start leaving little smudges or dark specks on your paper. So the erasing shield, eraser, and drafting brush are really good tools to have. And then the Ames lettering guide that I showed you last week is another great tool. And then and for our class, not as important, but if you're in intro or other classes, you may want to invest in a good architectural template. I have several varieties of templates here. This is more of an architectural template, and so you can see down here there are door swings, there's some circles, some plumbing fixtures on here. Some people like a circle template, but there are different varieties of these templates, and also if you're in intro, you might want a furniture template as well. So that's kind of a quick rundown of all the supplies that we would need for this class, and anything else, any additional supplies are just icing on the cake. If you're like me, you like office supplies. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about reading a scale now. And there is an assignment here that we've loaded into the class. Let me show you where that is. I'm going to turn off my camera for a moment. So if you go into homework, assignments, and quizzes in session 2, there's a measuring homework where you will be measuring these lines according to the scale at the left. And then you will use your lettering guide and you will write the dimension of that line to the right. And I'll be showing you how to do this in a moment. And then you also will have a homework assignment where you'll be drafting lines to specific scales. Now, before you can do that, you really need to know how to read a scale. And we do have a little bit of a practice exercise here. If you don't have a lettering guide, you can use your scale and draw, mark at 1/8 inch increments on your paper and use your T-square and draw guidelines. And I'll be showing you how to do that as well. So there are some practice materials within the class. There is a full demonstration through the University of Delaware. Did you guys do this earlier in your intro class, this demonstration? You did? Okay. I'm just going to go in here real quick to give you sort of a basic rundown of the scale. I won't go into the tutorial because you can do this on your own. But this is what your scale looks like. Can everybody see this on your screen? It's a kind of a rotating scale. Okay, so when you're using a scale, you will, first of all, a scale is a tool that allows you to draw things at a much smaller scale. So for us it's really helpful because if we were drawing a house, we couldn't draw it to full scale because we couldn't carry the paper with us. It'd be too big. So we have to have some kind of a tool for drawing something smaller but still being able to measure it. And that's where the scale comes into play. So when you're using a scale, you always begin at the 0. So this example here is an 1/8 inch equals 1 foot scale. And so you start with the 0 and you work this way across the scale to read feet. And it can be kind of confusing. So when you're at the 8, there's these upper numbers are the ones that you use. If I went over to the other end of the scale, the 1/4 inch scale is on this same edge. And so the 1/4 inch scale starts with 0 and is the lower set of numbers that you're seeing here. So there are 2 scales listed on each edge. You want to make sure what scale you're using and start where it says 0. So in this case, this is 0, 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot, etc. for the 1/4 inch. If we're going on the 1/8 inch side, we start at the 0 and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and etc. To measure our feet. Okay? So look closely at the 1/8 inch scale, reading from left to right. Each tick mark on the scale represents exactly 1 foot, no matter the length of the tick line. Note that not all the tick marks are labeled. The first labeled tick mark reads 4. So that's right here. The distance between the 0 tick and the 4 tick represents 4 feet. Easy, but now take a good look at the 1/4 inch scale. So reading from right to left, there are 4 scale increments, represents only 2 feet. So we're just looking at the longer lines as feet for the 1/4 inch scale. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and etc. So what does the distance between labeled tick marks on the 1/4 inch scale represent? So if you have each of these marks, what distance do you think that would be? These lower ones here, these smaller ones. So 0 to here, what would that represent if this is 0, 1?
A half foot?
Yes, it'd be a half foot. Yes, C is the answer. What does the distance between the adjacent tick marks, one long and one short, represent on the 1/8 inch scale? So the distance between 0 and this line here, what would that represent? Yes, A, 1 foot. Very good. Okay, so what does the distance between the adjacent tick marks, one long and one short, represent? Okay, so I guess that's it for that one. And then when we're reading inches, we read inches in this small area here. So when you're lining up with a line, first you line up from the 0 to this way. And whatever sticks over one of the lines would then you would slide it back to the closest foot, and then you would read the inches in this area here. So with this 1/8 inch scale, there's always 12 inches in a foot. So each of these would equal 2 inches. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So the feet you read in this direction and the inches you read in this direction here. Okay? And then with the 1/4 inch, you would read feet in this direction and inches in this direction. And in this case, each mark represents an inch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And you'll notice that some of the marks are longer than others. The longest mark in the middle here represents a 1/2 of a foot or 6 inches. And then these next to the longest lines indicate 1/4 of a foot, so 3 inches here, 6, 9, and 12 inches. And so if we were looking at an inch scale, it breaks down even smaller. So um, you're into a 1/4 inch, a 1/4, 1/2, 3/4 of an inch, 1 inch, and then these lines here represent inches, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on till you get to 12. And I'm going to be doing the practice with you that was in the class, so you can get an idea of how this is going to work out. If I can find it, I had set it aside. Okay, so going back to my camera view, we're going to read this scale together. So here I have a worksheet that shows an 1/8 inch scale, a 1/4 inch scale, and a 1/2 inch scale. Okay, and what we're going to do is measure these lines. So in the first category here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines that are at an 1/8 inch scale. So what we're going to do is we're going to see if I can zoom in with my camera a little bit. I don't know if I can or not. I can't. Okay. Um, so let's go ahead and do this. Okay, I'm going to bring this up towards the camera a little bit so you can see it better. So we have our scale, and you'll see right here, this is our 1/8 inch scale. So what we're going to do first is line up with the 0 with the end of the line. So we would start like this and line up with the 0. And then you can see over in this area over here, our line is sticking up past this, this mark here. So then we want to slide it back until that mark lines up. And then we read the rest of the inches in this area over here. So when we're looking at this, 44, 45 feet, and then we go over to this side here. See if I can get it up to the camera, and that 6 inches would line up with the middle line of the inch part. There are some of those over on the table over there, Emily, if you want some. Okay. So this particular worksheet has the lines and it has the measurement it should be, so you can practice with this one. I'm going to try a 1/4 inch one now so we can see the difference. So this was the 1/8, and then the 1/4 inch is always at the other end of the scale. And remember, when we're reading the 1/4 inch, we're using these longer lines. We're not using these short lines. So with the 1/4 inch, we're going to start again with the 0, and we're going to line it up till we get to the end of the line, lining up with the 0. And then it looks like we're sticking over into this area here. We're going to slide it back to the 22, which is the closest foot area, and then you will see over in this area we have the inches to read. And so when we line that up, it is sticking into the area, sorry it's hard to see, where it's 9 inches wide. And then we have the 1/2 inch. So this is the 1/2 inch scale. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. for 1/2 inch. We're going to go to our line, and we're going to line it up with the 0 first. So here is um, the 0, and it looks like we're sticking beyond what would be the 11-foot mark, which it's kind of confusing because there's a 5 there, but the 10, and then this would be 11, 12, 13, 14. We're going to slide it back to that line, which would be the 11-foot mark, and then we read the inches in the inch portion, so right in here. Get really close, and it looks like that is 1, 2, 3, 4.5 inches. Okay, now I know this is really difficult to see, so what I would suggest that you do as you're reading before you start your assignment is that you go ahead and go on to this University of Delaware site, and you can go through the whole practice of how to read a scale, and it won't let you go on until you've answered it correctly. So that really helps. So just to show you how this works, we have a line here, and we're going to measure it at let's measure it at 1/8 inch scale. So here's at 1/8 inch scale. So we would line it up with the 0. And then it looks like it is 16 feet and some inches. And then you slide it backwards until it's sticking into the inch area. And there is a little magnifying glass that you can bring over to read it. And it looks like it is 4 inches. Let's see if we're right. Yes. Okay. So let's try it in 1/4 inch scale. So we're going to slide it so the end is at the 0. And it looks like 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It looks like it's going to be 11 feet something, so we're going to slide it back to the 11 area. Come on, get in there. Oh, oh, for heaven's sakes. supposed to snap in there. And then we go into this area and we can read our inches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 inches. So 11, 11. Oops, I think it's because I'm not lined up completely. Let's try that again. Oh, snap. Snap. Okay. Oh, so we're more like 9. Let's try it again. Okay. So you can go through this whole tutorial. The one thing that you should note, depending on what scale you're using, is that the inches might be, those marks might represent 2 inches, they might represent an inch, they might represent a half an inch, depending on which scale you're using. But that area, that distance will always equal a foot. So there are 12 inches in a foot. And so if there are 6 marks, each mark would represent 2 inches. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to our assignments so you can get an idea of what you're doing. Are there any questions? Oh, here's someone typing. Yeah, someone's mic sounds like they're swimming in the ocean. Someone turned their mic on. I think it might be Gwyneth.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Did you have a question, Gwyneth?
No, I don't. I'm not sure what it's doing. I didn't put anything on it. Did I turn the
Okay.
mic on? Hold on.
There you go. Oh,
That one?
do you want me to mute you?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Okay, so our assignment, I'm going to turn on the camera again. Our assignment, the first part is drafting lines. We have a chart here of different lines that we are going to draft, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So first of all, I'm going to use regular, what would be copy paper, 8.5 by 11 paper. And I'm going to line it up with my T-square edge or my if I have a slide rule, I'm going to line the paper up with that, like so. And I'm going to tape it down with my drafting tape. Slide across so it's nice and tight on my paper. This is the only time when it's okay to rub your hands across your paper. Okay, so I've got my paper taped down. And you might need a couple pieces of paper to completely complete your project. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I did square down a piece of paper on the drafting table horizontally or landscape. I'm going to hand letter my name using guidelines. So if you have your Eames lettering guide, feel free to use that. If you have your Eames, you can use these little dots on the side and drag it across like this to create lines. If you don't, you can use your scale and go to your 1/8 inch and just mark off in 1/8 inch increments, like so. And then what you do is you put your pencil point down on your page and slide your horizontal rule or T-square up to it and slide across, and then go to the next one and slide across and go to the next one and slide across, and etc. till you have your guidelines. And then you can do your hand lettering in here. And if you wanted, you could put your class EDSN 107 AS2, okay, for assignment 2. All right. So you can do it either way. You can use your lettering guide if you have it, or you can measure it and draw the lines horizontally with your T-square. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to use your T-square and your triangle in conjunction and make a border on your paper. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure 1 inch from the left-hand side of the page to create a margin. So you've got your scale here. It says 16 on it. That increment is 1 inch. So we're going to measure over from the left edge of our paper and make a little mark right here. And then we use our triangle. Yes, the 16 is the inch increment. Or you can use your 1 inch scale. Either one. Okay. And then you line up your T-square so it's really tight and snug against your board. And then you set your triangle on top. You put your pencil tip on the mark that you just made, like so, and you slide your triangle over to it. And then you make a light mark down the side to create your margin. So you have an inch margin on the side. And then I would also suggest you use an inch margin at the top. So we'll go back to our scale and measure down from the top 1 inch. And we'll bring our horizontal up and across like so. Okay? All right. So then what we will do is we will create, I don't know why that did that, we'll be using our chart, and the first line that we'll be using is our 1/2 inch scale, and we're going to measure 17'5". So it looks like my line is overlapping, so I'm going to come in here and start with the next line down. I'm going to mark off in inch increments lines at the side here. And then lightly I'm going to draw lines across. Has to be done lightly. Okay. And so our first one is line A. You can use your lettering guide or your scale to do guidelines over next to your line, and you put an A, like so. And then you take your scale. Line A is at 1/2 inch scale, so you find your 1/2 inch on your scale, and you're going to measure 17 foot 5 inches. So we're going to find the 17. It's actually has a 2 on it. If you're measuring over, you've got 14, 15, 16, 17. You're going to line it up there. And then we're at 5 inches. So we'll measure over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. And we'll make a mark on our line. And then we can go back and darken between our mark and the margin line. Like so. And I suggest you make a pretty dark line there so we know where it stops. And so you go ahead and you do that with each of the lines. As I said, you might need more than one piece of paper to complete the assignment. Make sure you have your name on each sheet. Okay? Any questions on this one? Okay, the other one that we're going to be doing is the measuring the lines, which is also on your homework assignment. And so you'll see there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines that you'll measure at 1/4 inch scale. And then there's another 3 at 8, another 2 at 1 inch, 1/2 inch. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a 3/4, 2 3/8, 2 3/16 inch, and 2 3/32 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and measure the first line with you so you can get an idea. So we're going to go with the 1/4 inch. This is probably the scale you use the most frequently in interiors, although 1/8 is pretty popular too. So again, we start at the right and we work from 0 and line up the line along the edge starting with the 0 and then slide it backwards to the rounded foot and read our inches within this area here. And with this scale, each mark represents an inch. So here we go. We've got our 1/4 inch and we're lining it up with the 0 first. And it looks like it's past the 13 feet. So we're going to line it back up with the 13 foot, which doesn't have a number on it on your scale. And then you can read the inches within the this area here, and it looks like it's about 2 inches. It's hard to see on my camera. So we said 13 foot 2 inches. So what you will do is you will have this taped down on your board after you finish the other one. So let's go ahead and do that. And you'll hand letter your name on this sheet as well. And to the, if there's room, oops, I just dropped my pencil. Okay. There isn't a lot of room to the right, and the directions said you should write the distance to the right. Let's write it on top of the line. It'll be easier because you'll have a little bit more room. So for this 1/4 inch, let me slide down a little bit. We're going to make a guideline and a guideline above our line. And then we're going to write the distance of this line. So the way we do that is we write the feet first. So it was 13. And then we use like a little parentheses symbol as our foot. Okay. Then we put a dash, like a minus sign. And then we write the inches. So let's see what it was. It was 13 feet. Looks like it's 3 inches. 13 feet, 3 inches. So we would write 3 inches. Okay. If there had been like 3.5, the way you would write that would be 13 feet, 3 1/2 inch. Okay. If it were just like a 1/2 inch and no number inches, it would be 13 feet, 0 1/2 inch. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that?
I do.
Yes.
I'm having a terrible time seeing to the whole inch. On a 1/4 scale, how do you see a 1/2 inch?
On a 1/4 scale, let me see if I can get it up here. On a 1/4 inch, it would be, each line represents an inch. So if it was in between, I'm not going to make you do a 1/2 inch on a 1/4 inch scale, but like for instance on an inch scale, there are more lines. So it has like the inch, and then it has a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch. So on the larger scales, you're going to have more marks so you can get more accurate. Okay? If there are only 12 marks, I'm going to have you do it just to the nearest mark as far as accuracy goes. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And I'm sorry it's so hard to see on my camera, but you can do that practice to help you with that as well. But if there's only 12 marks, I'm just going to make you go to the inch. If there's more than that, then you could go to the 1/2 or the 1/4. Okay? And sometimes if it's a really fine scale, I've even had people who've used like a little magnifying glass just so they can see it better. If it's within a mark, I'm not going to be picky, because sometimes if you line it up just a little off, at the 0, it might sway things a little way. So I'm pretty forgiving where that is concerned. Okay? Any other questions? If you want to do the practice with me, I will be on tomorrow, and I'd be glad to go through the practice with you. Or I know Emily's available too, and or if you're having trouble reading a scale and you want if you're having trouble reading a scale, then you can always get help with that one particular scale during my office hours. I have go-to-meeting hours. So you could either log on with me or contact Emily as well. If, you know, scales are, it's one of those skills, reading a scale, that you need to learn and master, but it's kind of hard when you're first doing it. There is a link, there will be a link, I'll be sending out an invitation in the morning for my hours tomorrow. And my hours are, you know what, I'm not even sure what my hours are. I'm still getting used to my new schedule. Hold on, let me look on my phone if I can find it. My hours tomorrow are my go-to meeting hours are 10 to 2:30. Okay, so a good long time. If I'm not at the computer when you log on, wait a minute, I might have ran to the bathroom, or I might be helping someone here in the lab. So I'll try to check in and make sure that no one's waiting for me. And if you're planning on coming on, you could also send me an email. And then Thursday, I also have virtual office hours from 3:30 to 4:30. So I mean on Thursday. So there is some opportunity there to get some help before your next class period. Okay, any other questions for me? Yes, I want, whenever you're doing lettering, I want you to use a top and a bottom guideline. Any other questions? Okay, so that is all for this week. I thank you all for logging on, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me or come to my virtual office hours. I'll be sending out an invitation. Thank you.